A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
You know, Herman, I was looking at some portfolio data recently, and it struck me how most people treat their careers like a high-stakes gamble without even realizing it. They put everything on one horse, then act shocked when the horse trips. Today's prompt from Daniel hits on exactly that. He is asking us about the multi-client business model as a primary risk mitigation strategy. Specifically, how to balance that model against the administrative overhead, and more importantly, how to resist the siren song of that full-time offer that always seems to pop up just when things are getting stable. It is the classic single point of failure trap. We talk about this in engineering all the time. You would never build a critical system with one power supply or one server, yet the modern professional world is built on the idea that having one employer is the pinnacle of security. It is actually the most dangerous position you can be in.
It is a total structural illusion, corn. I am Herman Poppleberry, and I have spent a lot of time looking at the mechanics of independence. When a client offers you a full-time role, they are not usually doing it because they want to make your life easier or your future more secure. They are doing it to eliminate their own risk by increasing yours. They want to capture your entire capacity and, more importantly, they want to bring your proprietary processes inside their fence where they can control them. They want to move you from a capital expenditure to an operating expense that they can manage with a much tighter grip.
It is about moving from a distributed system to a centralized one. In any other field of technology, we recognize that centralization is a vulnerability, but in our careers we call it a promotion. Let us jump straight into the heart of this. Daniel is feeling the weight of the multi-client life. He is managing several different work streams, and he is seeing that full-time offer as a way to simplify his life. But we need to define the multi-client portfolio, not as busy work, but as a distributed system of income.
You are hitting on the fundamental shift from an employee mindset to a platform mindset. In a platform mindset, you are the infrastructure. You are a distributed system of income. If you have 5 clients and one of them leaves, you have lost 20% of your revenue. That is a bad Tuesday. You can recover from that by lunch. But if you have one employer and they let you go, you have lost 100% of your revenue. That is a catastrophe. The math of risk is clear, but the market pushes us toward consolidation because consolidation favors the buyer of labor, not the provider. We are currently in March of 2026, and if the last few years of AI integration have taught us anything, it is that internal roles are more volatile than they have ever been.
Let us talk about that push toward consolidation. Daniel mentioned the temptation of the full-time offer to simplify the workload. I get it. Managing 5 different email inboxes, 5 different sets of stakeholders, and 5 different billing cycles is exhausting. It is the death by 1,000 paper cuts. Or, as we discussed back in episode 558, it is the pecked by ducks era of email. The administrative burden is real. But we have to ask, is it actually higher than the political burden of being a full-time employee?
That is the right question, and it is one that most people fail to quantify. People underestimate the political tax of being internal. When you are a multi-client consultant, your relationship is built on outcomes. You deliver the thing, you get paid. When you are an employee, you are subject to the cultural gravity of the organization. You have to navigate the internal power struggles, the endless meetings that could have been emails, and the performance review theater. I would argue the administrative overhead of 3 clients is actually lower than the political overhead of one full-time job, especially if you have a standardized operating system for your business.
I want to dig into the math of that risk premium. If I am a consultant and I have 5 clients, each paying me a retainer, I'm essentially running a load balancer for my life. If one client starts demanding too much, I can throttle them or raise my rates. If I am an employee, I have no throttle. I have one pipe, and the employer controls the valve. How do we quantify the risk of that single relationship?
You look at the dependency ratio. In the software world, we talk about the rule of 40. It is usually about balancing growth and profitability. For a consultant, I like to use it as a dependency cap. Never let one client exceed 40% of your revenue. If they do, you are no longer a business. You are an employee in denial. When you hit that 40% mark, your primary job is no longer doing the work for that client. It is finding a new client to dilute that dependency. We saw this in the Bureau of Labor Statistics data from the first quarter of 2026. There has been a 14% increase in fractional executive roles. Companies are realizing they can get high-level talent without the long-term liability of a full-time salary. But interestingly, when they find someone truly excellent, they immediately try to lock them down with a full-time offer. It is a mechanism of control. They want to reduce your leverage. If you have other clients, you have the power to say no. If they are your only source of income, they own your schedule and your soul.
It sounds like a hostage situation disguised as a promotion. You mentioned having a standardized operating system to handle the administrative burden. I think that is where most people fail. They try to adapt to every client's workflow instead of forcing the client into theirs. This goes back to episode 558 and the concept of the briefing gateway. If Daniel is feeling overwhelmed by the admin of multiple clients, it is likely because he is letting each client dictate the communication protocol.
The briefing gateway is essential. It is a technical mechanism to standardize inputs. Instead of 5 different Slack channels and 5 different email threads, you create a single portal or a standardized weekly update format that you mandate. You tell the client, to ensure I am providing the highest level of service, all requests and feedback must go through this specific channel. This reduces the context switching cost, which is the real killer of productivity. If you can spend 4 hours a week on administration instead of 15, the burden of multiple clients disappears, but the benefit of risk mitigation remains. You have to build the middleware for your own life.
Let us pivot to the strategic mistake of the full-time offer. Daniel is in technology communications and AI. In 2026, that is a field moving at light speed. If he goes full-time with one company, he is essentially betting that this one company's vision of AI is the one that will win, or at least survive. He is narrowing his field of vision.
That is the consultant's paradox. You are more valuable to a client when you have other clients. Why? Because you are seeing the patterns across the industry. You are seeing what is working at Company A and applying the filtered, anonymized version of that insight to Company B. The moment you go full-time, you become an island. You lose your edge. Your value starts to decay the moment you sign an employment contract because you are no longer participating in the broader market exchange of ideas. You are just a cog in one specific machine.
And that machine can be replaced. We are seeing agentic workflows taking over entire departments this year. If you are the person who knows how to build and manage those workflows for 5 different companies, you are indispensable. If you are the person whose job is being automated inside one company, you are a line item waiting to be deleted. Independence is the only true job security in the age of automation.
It really is. And we need to talk about the power asymmetry here. When a client says, "Hey Daniel, we love your work, we want to bring you on full-time as our head of AI communications," they are making a power play. They are trying to move from a partnership of equals to a master-servant relationship. How do you decline that without offending them?
You have to frame it as a benefit to them. You do not say, "I value my freedom more than your company." You say, "I am incredibly flattered by the offer, and it is a testament to the great work we are doing together. However, my business model is built on maintaining a broad perspective across the industry. The reason I am able to bring these insights to you is specifically because I am engaged with multiple moving parts of the ecosystem. If I came internal, I would lose that edge, and the value I provide to you would actually decrease over time. You are not saying no to the work, you are saying yes to the quality of the work."
That is a perfect script. It turns your independence into a competitive advantage for the client. It is like saying you do not want a captive bird, you want a scout who can tell you what is happening over the next hill. But there is another layer to this, protecting the black box. Daniel asked about protecting his business from client scrutiny. I have seen this happen where a client asks, "Wait, how did you generate this report so fast? What tools are you using? Can we just have the login for that?"
That is where the invisible war tax comes in, which we discussed in episode 1380. When a client starts scrutinizing your internal workflow or demanding you use their specific project management tool for every tiny task, they are eroding your productivity. They are trying to turn you into staff augmentation rather than an outcome-based partner. Staff augmentation is high risk. You are just a pair of hands. Outcome-based delivery is a partnership.
To protect the black box, you have to be firm about the product versus process boundary. You sell products, not hours. If they ask how you did it, you explain the methodology at a high level, but you keep the implementation proprietary. Think of it like a restaurant. You pay for the meal. You do not get to walk into the kitchen and ask for the recipe and the names of the suppliers and a tour of the walk-in freezer. If they want the how, they are asking for your intellectual property, and that has a much higher price tag than a monthly retainer. You have to treat your internal automation, your custom AI prompts, and your research databases as trade secrets.
I think people get caught up in the word freelancer. Freelancer sounds like you are waiting for scraps. A firm of one implies structure, authority, and proprietary systems. When Daniel talks about his work, he needs to use the language of a firm. Firms have processes. Firms have standard operating procedures. Firms do not get hired as employees. They get engaged as partners.
And as a firm, you have to manage the invisible war tax religiously. This is the drain on your resources caused by client-induced friction. Every time a client asks you to join an internal culture meeting or a sync that has no agenda, they are taxing your business. You have to define the terms of engagement in the contract. You are a team player on the project, not a team player in the HR department. I always recommend having a standard operating procedure document that you give to every new client. It says, "This is how we communicate. These are the hours I am available for meetings, and this is the lead time I need for deliverables." By setting those boundaries early, you manage the power asymmetry. You are signaling that you have a system, and they are lucky to be a part of it rather than you being a lucky recipient of their work.
It is about maintaining that frame. If you act like a servant, they will treat you like a servant. If you act like a specialist, they will treat you like a specialist. And specialists do not take full-time jobs that limit their ability to be specialists. Herman, let us look at the psychological side of this. Declining a full-time offer can feel like you are being difficult or ungrateful. How do you get past that internal hurdle?
You have to realize that business is not about gratitude, it is about value exchange. The client is not doing you a favor by hiring you, they are solving a problem they have. If you are solving that problem effectively as a consultant, you have already fulfilled your end of the bargain. You do not owe them your future just because you did a good job in the past. In fact, by staying independent, you are being more loyal to the quality of your work than you would be if you let yourself get bogged down in their internal politics. This is what we discussed in episode 1378 about the power of professional dissent. It is much easier to be the devil's advocate or the person who tells the hard truth when you know you have 4 other clients waiting for you if this one gets upset. Independence is the foundation of honesty.
That is a powerful perspective. Staying independent is an act of professional integrity. It ensures you can always give them the best, most objective advice without worrying about how it will affect your next promotion or your standing with the boss. But let us get back to the administrative side. If Daniel is running 3 to 5 clients, he is context switching constantly. Even with a briefing gateway, that is a heavy cognitive load. How do we optimize the technical architecture of his day?
You have to implement what I call the client health dashboard. It is a simple spreadsheet where you track 2 things, the revenue percentage and the administrative tax of each client. If a client provides 20% of your revenue, but takes up 50% of your mental energy or administrative time, they are a toxic asset. You need to either automate their requirements, raise their rates to compensate for the friction, or fire them. You have to be as cold-blooded about your client roster as a hedge fund manager is about their portfolio.
I love the idea of a client health dashboard. It takes the emotion out of it. It is just data. If the data says a client is a drain, you act on the data. This also helps with the rule of 40. If you see one client creeping up to 50 or 60% of your revenue, The dashboard should be flashing red. That is your signal to stop doing the work and start doing the marketing.
And you should also be looking at the independence dividend. This is the extra revenue you generate by being more efficient than an employee. You should be reinvesting that dividend back into your own black box. Buy the better AI tools, hire a virtual assistant to handle the billing, or spend time on R&D. An employee is an expense to a company. A business is an asset. You are building an asset that can be scaled, optimized, or even eventually sold. You cannot sell your job, but you can sell a consultancy that has proprietary processes and a stable client base.
Let us talk about the 3-client rule. I think this is a vital takeaway for Daniel. Never have fewer than 3 clients. Why 3?
Because 2 is just one layoff away from a disaster. If you have 2 clients and you lose 1, you are down 50%. That is a crisis. If you have 3 and you lose 1, you are down 33%. That is manageable. 3 is the minimum for structural stability. It gives you enough of a buffer to breathe and enough diversity of thought to stay sharp. It also prevents any one client from feeling like they own you. The power asymmetry shifts in your favor when you have options.
And in 2026, with the economy being as volatile as it is, that diversity is your only real protection. We have talked before about the erosion of productivity during conflict or instability. When you have a multi-client business, especially if those clients are geographically dispersed or in different sectors, you are hedging against local economic downturns or policy shifts. It is a decentralized approach to personal finance that aligns perfectly with the American entrepreneurial spirit.
It really is. It is about individual sovereignty. When you are an employee, your labor is a commodity owned by someone else. When you are a multi-client business owner, you are a participant in the free market. You are practicing a form of micro-capitalism that is much more resilient and, frankly, much more honest. You are paid exactly what you are worth to the market at any given moment.
So we have the rule of 40 for revenue dependency. We have the product versus process boundary for protecting your inner mechanics. We have the independence dividend for reinvesting in your own platform. And we have the briefing gateway to handle the admin. It sounds like a complete architectural blueprint for what Daniel is trying to do.
It is. And it is a blueprint that more people are going to have to follow as the traditional employment model continues to fracture. The firm of one is not just a lifestyle choice anymore, it is a strategic necessity in a volatile, AI-driven economy. If you can master the mechanics of it, you are not just surviving, you are building a moat around your career that no single company can breach.
I love the idea of a career moat. It is not just about the money, it is about the structural integrity of your life. Before we wrap this up, let us give Daniel some concrete steps for his next client meeting where this might come up.
Step 1. Audit your revenue. If any client is over 40%, start a lead generation campaign today. Do not wait for the contract to end. Step 2. Create your standard operating procedure document. Define your boundaries before they are crossed. This includes your communication channels, your meeting availability, and your delivery formats. Step 3. Script your no for the full-time offer. Practice it until it sounds natural and like a benefit to the client. Remember, you are staying independent to stay valuable. Step 4. Identify one piece of your black box that you have been giving away for free and put a wall around it. Stop explaining how you do the work and start focusing on the value of the outcome.
And step 5. Remember that every time you say no to a full-time offer, you are saying yes to your own freedom and your own future. It is a powerful position to be in. It is the difference between being a passenger on someone else's ship and being the captain of your own fleet.
It really is. And I think Daniel is in a great spot to lead the way on this, given his background in AI and automation. He is already building the tools that make this model possible. He just needs to apply the same engineering rigor to his business model that he applies to his technical work.
This has been a deep dive, and I think it is one of the most important topics we have covered lately because it hits at the heart of how we all work in this new era. Herman, thanks for the technical breakdown. I think your donkey brain really shined on this one.
I will take that as a compliment, Korn. It is all about the mechanics. If you understand the structural forces at play, you can build a life that is resistant to the shocks of the market.
It always is. Let us move into some practical takeaways for the listeners who are currently feeling pecked by ducks or tempted by that steady paycheck. The first thing I would say is to implement that client health dashboard immediately. It does not have to be fancy. A simple spreadsheet where you track what percentage of your income comes from each source and how many hours of administrative tax each client is charging you. If a client is 20% of your revenue but 50% of your stress, that is a bad investment. You need to rebalance the portfolio.
And do not be afraid to fire a client if they refuse to respect your boundaries. It sounds scary, but the moment you do it, you create space for a better client who will respect your systems. It is like pruning a tree. You have to cut the dead weight so the rest can grow. The second takeaway is to standardize your operating system. Use the same tools for every client. If they want you to use their project management tool, tell them you will provide updates there, but your internal work happens in your system. Do not let them export their chaos into your business. You are the filter that turns their chaos into outcomes.
Finally, the 3-client rule. Never have fewer than 3 clients. 2 is just one layoff away from disaster. 3 gives you enough of a buffer to breathe and enough diversity of thought to stay sharp. It is a technical architecture for a resilient life. And in 2026, resilience is the most valuable currency there is.
Well said. Independence is a technical choice, not just a career path. It requires discipline, systems, and a clear understanding of risk, but the reward is a level of freedom and security that no full-time job can ever provide.
I think that is a perfect place to leave it. Daniel, hopefully this gives you some fuel for your next negotiation. You are building something important, and protecting it is worth the effort. This has been my Weird Prompts. A huge thanks to our producer Hilbert Flumingtop for keeping the gears turning behind the scenes. And a big thanks to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power this show, and allow us to explore these topics in such depth.
If you found this episode helpful, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. It really helps us reach more firms of one who are trying to navigate this new economy. You can also find us on Telegram. Just search for My Weird Prompts to get notified whenever we drop a new episode or to join the conversation with other independent professionals.
We will be back soon with another prompt from Daniel. Until then, keep building your moat and protecting your black box.
See you next time.
See you next time.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the flows from sloth, from man, from long-eared host. My Weird Prompts, until next time, stay curious, keep weirding.